Welcome to Ground Pass. That might be me breaking Anastasia very early on, but
It's not.
it's our devious plan to get you into tennis is creating this podcast, and I with my very well spoken British accent will play the villain and lure you into the sordid world of tennis. This makes no sense if you haven't seen the video. Anastasia may have to cut this out, and I don't know where I'm going with this. But hello, it's the
Nick,
Australian Open.
it is the Australian Open. But Nick, this is why our listeners come to this podcast. To see our ridiculousness. They're not here for the tennis. They're like, what craziness are they gonna do now?
No, it's just Nick being weird and Anastasia not knowing what to do with it. This is why I am the Ground Pass VP of memes.
And I am the head CEO.
She jokes, but yeah, Anastasia pretty much runs everything, and then I just occasionally send her something that just occasionally make her laugh.
I just keep you around for the British accent, really. It just gives us a little bit more validity, you know?
Validity in what area, I don't know. Maybe in how to fit in the traditionally very traditional Wimbledon setup.
Well, we have to have it's the motherland of tennis, so we had to represent for sure.
So I'm glad that we're happy to be here in time for the Happy Slam.
It is the Happy Slam. It is summer in Australia, and it is time for tennis. It is time for tennis. It was a pretty quiet start. If you're listening to this, we're recording this on January 12th, our time. It's the 13th in Australia. They're always a day ahead, but we're recording this on Sunday. This episode will be out on Monday, and we just went through day one of the Australian Open. It was very rainy, Nick. It was very rainy.
Yes, I'm very glad I didn't stay up for it, because there was part of me that there was a couple of matches that I was tempted to stay up for, but I decided nope, sleep is important. I know which match I want to catch up on in the morning, so I will set an alarm and I'll wake up and I will watch that match back if there isn't an epic going on live that I could miss. And then I woke up and discovered the match I wanted to watch was happening.
Right there. Perfect. The rain helped you out, actually.
A little bit,
it delayed it. Yeah.
It didn't help out the rest of Australia, but it helped, the people in the European time zone out a little bit to be able to catch some of the tennis.
Yes, it did. And, once I saw the rain starting, I thought, oh no, it's day one of the Australian Open and ground passers are getting rain. And I thought, bummer. And then I remembered the Australian Open has 3 roofs, which, if you follow us on social media, I did struggle with the way to spell that and how to put it in. So let us know in the comments what your version of roofs are. Anyway, quick diversion there. But yeah, John Cain Arena, which is one of their main stadiums that has some seats available to ground pass holders, does have a roof. So some ground passers were probably able to take shelter there and watch some matches before play started on the outside courts again.
Yeah. So I gather the rain lasted a few hours there, and let's face it, you and I have both experienced this at Grand Slams before. It's not massively uncommon to happen. It is still weird to think about, given our sort of non-native idea of what an Australian summer is.
Yeah.
But hey, it rains every now and again, and we've seen it. So thank goodness that there was roofs that people could watch and either watch inside or watch on screens. But there was some tennis, and certainly the match I managed to watch I enjoyed.
Which was that? Which one did you see?
Clara Towson against Linda Noskova.
Ooh, I didn't see that. How was it?
That was I had that circled from as soon as the draw came out, pretty much. That and it was pretty much lived up to expectation. Both of those girls hit the ball, and they're both youngish players. and it was great to see. And basically, it was basically them trying to, use their power, use their offensive skills as effectively as possible. And it was basically, if one of them showed cracks, could the other exploit it? And yeah, 3 close sets. Probably one of the most interesting matches of the day, I would say. And yeah, it ended with Clara Towson claiming a last-minute break to get the win, 6-4 in the decider against
Wow.
Moscow, knocking out the 29th seed.
Nice. I mean, speaking of which, I'm looking at it now, and that was your second matchup on your watch list. So if you're listening and you don't know, every single day we are going to be posting our watch list as if we were going to the Australian Open on a ground pass, where we would start, how we would plan our day, and where we'd be going. So that was your second match up. Obviously, with the rain, it probably switched around the schedule.
If we'd gone, it would have
Yeah.
thrown everything out because suddenly
Yep.
I looked at my list and like Jerry Shang versus Alejandro Davidovich Fokina is now tomorrow.
Yeah.
That didn't happen at all. And then Paolo Badosa and Wang Xingyu ended up happening at the same time as Towson and Noskova. I would have still gone with Towson Noskova, I think, if I had to choose between them. But for I gather, Badosa Wong ended up being a little bit of a battle as well, even if it was straight set for Badosa. But yeah, that would have been a bit of a nightmare. And so now we're going to have to dig into the schedules to work out. Because I sent Anastasia a nice order. Oh, good, the day 2 schedules out. I'll just send Anastasia my order now. Do that now. And then now matches have been moved over and didn't happen. So now I'm going to have to look at it again. And yeah, making more work for both of us.
Yeah. And, this is just part of going to a Grand Slam with so many matches on. I had we released a bonus episode that I recorded with Tony Wright, who is Balance Tennis on Instagram. And we basically were talking about the draw and how we build schedules for going to Grand Slams and how we approach it. And one of the things we talked about was like, definitely have a plan, because don't go to a Grand Slam without a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're in trouble. But you have to also be ready to throw your plan out of the window and go with a plan B or a plan C or even a plan D, depending on if matches go long or if there's rain or if something happens or if matches go short. Sometimes matches go short and all of a sudden you're like, oh, need to run over to the other court to catch the match I'm going to. So really excited for our little watch lists. We'll be releasing them every day. So if you need help making your plan, stick with Ground Pass and we'll have you covered. What else? Oh, just a few things from day 1 of the Australian Open, where you're kind of like seeing the new setup and like new things. I saw there's a lot of video of this thing they're doing called like the Blue Zone, which is, I think they air it on YouTube, on their YouTube channel. I'll put a link in our show notes. And it's basically just, a fun commentary on matches and what's going on around the ground. So if you want a more sort of lighthearted, fun, commentary kind of show, they're going to give that to you. But also, they're also like going around finding like the cool things happening on the ground. So for example, when I woke up, Hadi Habib was winning his match on, I can't even remember what court he was on, but he was winning his match. And if you don't know, so Hadi Habib is a Lebanese player who last year became the first Lebanese tennis player to qualify for the Olympics. He played Carlos Alcaraz in the first round, so it was kind of like everywhere. He qualified for this Grand Slam. It's the first time anyone from Lebanon has qualified for a Grand Slam. And he just won his very first match at a Grand Slam, the first time anyone from Lebanon has ever won a match at a Grand Slam. So he is hitting all the history notes in one go. He's like, check that off the list. And some of the reporters from Blue Zone like ran over to the court to like interview him on the ground. So that was pretty cute. That was cool.
Hadi Habib is already our first feel-good story of this Australian Open, which is fantastic. I love it. I saw that result and I was like, yeah, this is what everyone's going to be excited about. Hope that he continues to push forward in this draw. It's going to get tough from here.
Yes, it definitely will. And for anyone who doesn't realize how big this is for Hadi, because he isn't a top player, he's playing challengers. The Grand Slam is kind of where he makes his living in order to continue being a tennis player. And he does get some prize money from qualifying, but for winning his first round match, he made, I think it's over $81,000 for winning his first match, and now he's into the second round, so he'll even get more money there. That's his year. It's travel expenses. It's expensive for his coaches, so maybe he can like have coaches who travel with him, or it's being a tennis player is a pretty expensive sport if you haven't realized from all our chats, but it's really big for Hadi. So not only is he making history, he's pretty much making his year a little bit.
Yeah, big moments for Hadi. What other things are you loving from this Australian Open, Anastasia?
Okay. The Australian Open took one of my favorite things from the United Cup and brought it to the Australian Open, and I am loving it. So I was sitting down. So before I went to sleep, the last thing I did, I had the Donna Vekic match on. That's basically what I fell asleep to. I was like, I put it on, and then I fell asleep, and then I wake up to more tennis. But they have now at the Australian Open seats on the court for the coaches, just like they did at the United Cup. I'm so excited because and it's the first day, so I think the only interview from that area that I saw was actually of Sasha Bayan. Is that how you say his last name? Sasha
Bayan, I heard. I don't know. Yeah,
Bayan. Yeah, he is Donna Vekic's new coach, actually. So just before the match, they threw a mic on him and interviewed him from that box seat. And, her whole team is there. And they're right on court. And I think this is something I read that the Australian Open was using this as a way, because we now have coaching in tennis, but on a lot of courts, the coaching box is way up and the tennis players can't even, in some cases, can't really hear what their coaches are saying. I definitely have watched some matches where there's like yelling back and forth just because they can't hear what each other is saying, even though you're allowed to do it. So I think moving their seats to the court is a great idea. I think I saw something from Andy Murray, where we love hearing from Andy Murray on this podcast, where he was of two minds about it because you're court level, you can't really see the points going back and forth. So it might be difficult, but at the same time, so even now that these boxes are on court, there are now also screens for the coaches that is giving them sort of, how do you call it? Stats, basically stats of the match and things like that. And I don't know if they have a video like overview. That would be great too, because I understand you kind of want to see the movement and where the ball's going. And sometimes if you're court level, you can't really see the whole picture. Either way, I love it. I'm excited. It's only day one. I want to see how it goes. Next up, let's get some translators and commentary, because that's the next thing. Like, I speak Spanish and English, and I can understand a bit of French. But other than that, I'm at a loss.
Yeah,
and this is an international sport.
Doesn't even cover, like, English covers a lot of the tour, but not all of it.
No.
So, that's going to limit it. I mean, I'm thinking about what you were saying about getting the boxes like down level, and I hadn't thought about the coaches like saying, "Oh, we don't get a great angle from where we are." I am curious to know about the logistics of it, in terms of how they're going to do it, because they're obviously doing it in Australia. The next thing to ask is anywhere else going to do it. The US Open setup, so I don't know whether that's possible for them to do on those big courts. Wimbledon would be impossible. I can guarantee to you already it would be impossible. You could do it on the smaller courts. They already are at player level on the smaller courts. But like, if I think centre court at Wimbledon, I don't know if this is the same at other ones. The two player teams actually sit next to each other. Like, they're not actually sat opposite ends of the court. They sit them next to each other in the same corner. So Yeah,
Oh,
and
so
they're
they
both
can't really
great.
say much, if anything.
Yeah, and that's centre court. So yeah,
Yeah.
you would have to. And look at the way Wimbledon centre court said. You'd have to completely redesign the bottom of centre court to be able to do that. So I don't think this is something we're going to be seeing universally across tennis, but it might be something to look forward to with the Australian summer, maybe in the US.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the US Open courts now, and like some of them I feel like are small. I mean, for example, on Louis Armstrong, the coaching boxes are already pretty low, so I don't think they need to be any closer. Um, on Arthur Ashe, they could probably put them on the court. It's a big enough space to put on the court, just like they did in Australia. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how other tournaments, implement this, or if it even goes any further than Australia. If the players and coaches are all on board for it. But I feel like the cat's out of the bag. Coaching's allowed. They're putting mics in their boxes. I think we can just move on and just
I don't think
embrace it.
I don't think ground pass listeners, in terms of people who are maybe a bit newer to tennis, are in on the whole coaching argument, because
No,
that's
probably not.
something that's to do with long-standing tennis fans and an idea of an attitude of what the sport should be. I think in their mind, it's a bit like having coaching at a chess match for people who are against having coaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's meant to be a battle of the minds as much as battle of the bodies for some people. When I was talking about the Wimbledon setup, I realised you probably didn't know this, and I can't think of any other tournament where you would literally sit the teams next to each other.
Because I feel like that defeats. And hey, here's the thing. Like you said, with the history of tennis where coaching wasn't allowed, it's fine because they're just sitting next to each other being quiet. But now that coaching is
Well, they're
allowed,
not being quiet. They're cheering on their players, and they're right next to
oh,
each other.
right, they're cheering on their players. That's true, but that's different than sort of like strategy and like hit to his forehand, and then their coach is right there on the other side.
Because I was thinking this, it could be, but then also I'm thinking like, well, hang on, the other team's going to hear it anyway.
Right, right. Anyway, we don't want to go down a coaching rabbit hole. Here we are at the Australian Open. But what else? A couple of matches that I saw. I watched Qin Zhen and Arthur Fils, who had surprisingly tight starts to the Australian Open. I mean,
Okay,
wow.
I know you're a Feast fan.
Yes.
I'm not surprised. It's Arthur Feast. He gets himself a scrap at any given opportunity.
You know what? Knowing his opponent, it was Otto Virtanen, who I think, again, might not be the name that you know, but he's no slouch. He's like a good player. So it definitely wasn't sort of like a cakewalk of a round. But still, I was a bit surprised. I was like, how are we here, Arthur Fils? What is happening? But he was able to sort of scrap it together and take the win. Another match that I watched a bit of the highlights of because I didn't watch it live, and I remember when I went to sleep looking at the scores and thinking, oh, it's a shame Kai Nishikori is going to be out of the tournament. And friends,
He's
ground
not.
passers, if this is a lesson, learn this lesson. Tennis is going to tennis. And even though your favorite player or whoever it is has lost the first two sets, that means nothing at a Grand Slam sometimes. Especially when it's against Kai Nishikori, because I went to sleep with him down 2-0 and I wake up and he's 1-5. That I mean, that might be a match where I go back and actually just watch the whole thing. I only watch the highlights, which doesn't tell the whole story. But yeah, Kai Nishikori back at Grand Slams, winning 5 sets,
And
epics.
that's always what he's done for his
Yeah.
entire career. I think he's got himself almost as many 5-set wins as the big three in his career. Like, his numbers are on similar levels with them. He is one of the most difficult people to beat in a tennis match, and not bad for a man who's 35.
He is 35 and he's still there. I mean, it is something that we didn't really talk about because of just the way the tournaments ended and stuff. But we never really talked about it. We did on our social media, but Gael Monfils winning his tournament at 38. And he's now the oldest player since I think the 70s, I think is
Yeah.
what I read.
Ken Rosewall in
To
77, when actually Ken Rosewall, when he won that in 77, he would have been 42.
Wow. Whoa.
They were built different back then. It wasn't uncommon back in the 60s and 70s for players to continue into their 40s.
Yeah. It was probably also a different like style, probably not as maybe taxing on the body. But either way, Gael Monfils, 38, wins a tournament and breaks that record. Not breaks it, but no one's done it since the 70s. And that's just so impressive. It's so great seeing these players still out there. Even if you look at Novak, who's in his late 30s as well, and they're still out here playing tennis, taking it to the new one. Because also, Gael Monfils won against Zizou Bergs, who's a pretty young dude, coming up on the scene. It was nice to see Zizou in a final. But yeah, that was in Auckland. Auckland is the tournament he won. But yeah, so that was the first day of the Australian Open. It was pretty quiet, pretty chill, because of the way it all landed, where some matches had to be canceled and rescheduled for the day. Day two's schedule is jam packed. It
I'm still
looks
trying to put it together, but it was kind of jam packed
already.
anyway.
Yeah.
Because, like, for some reason, the organisers decided that despite the fact it's day two of the Australian Open, they decided to pack Djokovic, Sinner, Alcaraz, Goff, Osaka, Swiatek, Tsitsipas, like all into the same day.
Yeah. In a few hours. Because I feel, for example, Novak is playing at the same time as Carlos Alcaraz. So, for example, if you're on the grounds, first of all, those matches are in the big stadiums, so you probably can't watch them without those tickets to the stadiums.
You can't,
but
no, they're Rob Laver and Margaret Court. You won't have ground pass. You can't get it.
You won't have ground passes. You can watch them on a screen. Yeah. But they're happening at the same time. So it's now you're sort of juggling a screen and like which one you're going to watch, or you just double screen it if you can for people watching from home, or if you're there and you have two devices. I don't know. Like,
I mean, I have to go into work on Monday, so yeah. I think I might get questions if that's what I'm doing. Nick, you have two computer screens. They both have tennis on, and
where is your work?
What are you doing? Like, you have two projects to deliver this week.
To all bosses of tennis lovers, this is a special time. This is a time that is dear in the hearts of all tennis lovers. It's called a Grand Slam, and you are just going to have to deal with it.
I feel like we need to institute Grand Slam leave.
You know what? I'm going to make Grand Slam leave letters. And if you comment in on any of our posts on Grand Pass asking for permission for a Grand Slam leave from Grand Pass, say that like 4 times as fast. If you want a Grand Slam leave from Grand Pass letter, write in. I will personally write one to your boss.
It's 9 a.m. for you.
I know. And I actually got pretty good sleep. I took it easy on day one. I took it very easy on day one because I just know it's gonna get difficult over the next few days with the sleeping.
Anyway, head CEO, I'm just writing my application for Grand Slam leave to you from your VP of memes.
Okay, good. I will get on that and write that and write that letter.
Immediately because I'm supposed to be working during the tennis.
But yeah, so what can you expect from us on Ground Pass? So if you're listening to this, I know we've talked about some matches, but by the time you're listening to this on Monday morning, a lot of them would have probably happened. Time zones, that's kind of what it is. But we will have daily updates on our social medias across Instagram, Threads, X, wherever you're socially, active, we're there. Or at least we try to be. So we'll have daily watch lists from Nick and I, which we'll put together every day and release them about a couple of hours before the order of play begins, so that you can kind of either use it to plan your watch schedule, and you can also use it if you're watching from home. I use mine watching from home. The rain, of course, derailed it a little bit, but those were the matches I was watching from home as well. Also, coffee catch-ups, which, by the way, I see all of you out there loving the coffee catch-ups. Thank you. I'm enjoying making them. It's literally me just making my coffee every morning and filming it. So it's been fun. We will have daily coffee catch-ups over the Australian Open, and where we'll just catch you up with what matches, interest us. If there's any like fun news coming out of the Australian Open, things that maybe you want to go back and watch, we'll update you. And Nick is going to participate. Nick does not drink coffee, I found out today. And as head CEO, I don't know, we must have a review.
Your coffee usage is way too low. This has impact on your productivity.
Exactly. But either way, Nick doesn't drink coffee, but Nick, you might be sending in some voice memos, so those will be sort of interwoven into the coffee catch-up.
Do my best to try and make sure Anastasia doesn't do everything, because it is a 2-person podcast, and she does 90% of the work. So I will try and pitch in wherever I can to send something in, and let you know my thoughts on the previous tennis day. Anastasia keeps telling me it needs to be a minute to 90 seconds, and I keep thinking, I don't shut up. This is going to be a challenge.
Because we have to fit it into the reel, so I don't want it to be like too long, but it's fine. And Nick, really, the reason why I want you to participate is obviously for the British accent and our, validity is really why we need you to be part of the coffee catch-up.
I guess I'm here to boost Anastasia's credibility.
We just need that British accent, someone who sounds like they know what they're talking about.
I'm glad I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
The bookworm, the one who has all the tennis history, that is our head VP of memes, Nick Carter. Anyway, we have way too much fun on this podcast, and we should probably.
I feel like this mini pod's going to be nonsense, because I think we've kind of covered everything. Because we're a day into a Grand Slam. You've done a draw show already. We're giving you we're just telling you, basically, TLDR, or I suppose TLDL.
TLDL.
Listen. Follow our social media. If you take anything from that, follow our social media.
That is really just that. I should probably name the podcast that. Ground Pass. Follow our social media.
Yeah. This is like a half an hour long advert for our social media.
I mean, we do what we have to do, to promote ourselves. Either way, if you have listened this long, you are truly a ground passer, and we love and appreciate you for staying in there with our chaotic energy after the first day of a Grand Slam. So,
and tell you what, shout out to our ground passers for the Australian Open tomorrow, because top tip I would suggest, head to John Cain Arena and fight your way for one of those legendary unreserved seats, because if you do that, you could see Stefanos Tsitsipas, Iga Swiatek, who is someone you very rarely see on a ground pass, playing an actual match, Jessica Pegula, and Nick Kyrgios.
I have to. So actually, the TLDL of this entire podcast is, if you do anything tomorrow on the grounds of Melbourne, is to sprint, not walk, sprint to John Cain Arena, and then just stay there. Stay there.
That's a general rule I would say for any ground pass. Whichever tournament you go to, is if you have an idea of which match you want to go to, get there as soon as the gates open and head straight to the court and grab a seat. Especially if you know there's a big player or a popular player playing, you need to head straight there.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be packed out. That is a really packed order of day of play on John Kane Arena. So, thank you for listening. If we haven't already told you, please follow us on social media and stay tuned to all of our shenanigans over there. You could also watch this. I didn't even realize you can watch this not only on YouTube but on Spotify. So if
Yep.
you're on Spotify, you can actually also watch our little shenanigans, which is fun. Nick, any parting thoughts for our ground passers? I mean, that was a pretty good one with the John Kane Arena, but I think we hit it all.
I think we've got it. Yeah. Parting thoughts. Enjoy the Australian Open, whatever time zone you're watching it in. If you're falling asleep to it, waking up to it, or you are lucky enough to be in the Australian Open time, Australian Pacific, Asia Pacific time zone, and can actually watch most of it, just sit back and enjoy it. If you're not already on the ground.
He said it best, guys. We'll see you later. Bye.